I thought it was being haunted.
Already? That was it? You cleaned up?
I mean, I didn't do all the dishes, but I...
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that was fast. Congratulations. Super fast. All right, here we are. All right, now sleep.
Be careful with this one. She's going to listen.
Honestly, if you do listen, you might learn something that will give you such an edge on people who have a hard time sleeping before a test, before a sporting event. So the techniques that we do when we're done with the lecture part, so after the boring bit, then we do the exercise that teaches you how to think so you sleep, right? Because sometimes we think about the wrong things the wrong way. All right, so we're finally at part 3 from the series of Tenets of Perfect Sleep. Thank you for being here again, those of you who are. So how do we eat for restful sleep? We're going to go through a little faster than normal since we consumed a lot of time in the kitchen today. And it's a good way to spend the time. So the first thing is we should all have a rudimentary understanding of blood sugar or blood glucose. When we talk about glucose, we talk about measurements and that sort of thing. I want you to know what we're referring to. Generally speaking, when we eat, we're eating, why? Because we're hungry. We haven't eaten in a while, right? Or for those of you who say, I don't really generally feel hungry, and I sometimes feel that way too, we eat because our energy is low. Sometimes we eat because we're in a social event or a social gathering. But generally speaking, we're eating because we have to. But it's usually more reactive and impulsive than it is premeditated, right? So a lot of people who have a lot of success with eating come from the proper planning and preparation perspective, right? Meaning that you should start what you're going to eat several days ahead of time with your grocery list, right? So your grocery list is going to be the foundation of your success and your failure when you're planning your food and you're planning your meals, right? Suzette was telling me today, I was like, I have to go to the grocery store. Do you want me to get anything? And she calls me and she's like, I haven't prepared our meal plan for this week. So she's not ready for me to go to the store for her. She went separately later on, right? But the idea is the planning is really where the winning happens, right? You can't really win if you're eating reactively, okay? But how often do we actually stop to think, you know what? How many of you have thought, I really need to sleep well tomorrow night. What should I eat before I go to bed?
Just the first part.
The first part. No, yeah. I think we all have days where we're like, oh, I got to wake up so early on Tuesday. I have to sleep early and well on Monday, right? But how many of us take that extra step to say, therefore, this is what I'm going to eat. And therefore, I'm going to eat at this time, right? So today's lecture is going to give you some insight and some illumination in terms of how macronutrient balance and timing can affect your sleep. Now, your body is a miraculous machine, and it can make adjustments to keep your blood glucose to a sort of homeostasis, right?
That way a little bit,
Me? I'm blocking the info. This is more important. What we need to know is that when we don't eat, our body does have other metabolic ways of elevating your blood sugar. We'll cover more detail about some of those later on. But those changes, those metabolic changes don't really kick in until you've been kind of depressed for a while. Your blood sugar has been, let's say, neglected or depressed, or you haven't eaten in several hours, right? And in some cases, that's not necessarily so bad. I'm a big promoter of the idea that you should practice what I call metabolic flexibility. That's not a term you can Google and find. There's something I talk about, is that you should teach your body to adapt to days where you're fasting, and you should teach your body also to quickly adapt to days where you have a bountiful amount of food, right? So you're not always eating in excess and you're not always under eating either, but you're teaching your body to switch between them, much like nomadic prehistoric human beings probably did just because they had to, okay? So I think about that metabolic plasticity a lot. But generally speaking, if you're gonna ask me, and I know I'm in the minority, the most important meal of the day is dinner. Without a doubt. For me, it's dinner, 100%. And I'll fight people. They say, oh, it's breakfast. Why? We actually have mechanisms that elevate our blood sugar right before we wake up. And if you're actually hungry or thirsty, you'll find out why in just a moment. That probably means you overate the night before. Okay? Yeah. There are many ways to measure blood glucose. I mean, not many, but there are many devices available. You have the spot reading, and then you have the continuous glucose monitors that are now available pretty pervasively. Our body wants our blood glucose to be at a certain homeostasis. In regards to sleep, our blood glucose reading should be between 80 and 100 milligrams per deciliter before you go to sleep. Okay? That's like within 30 minutes of bedtime. With the sweet spot being, this is just statistical figures once again, right? So sweet spot being between 90 to 100 milligrams per deciliter. Now, this doesn't tell you anything about your insulin sensitivity or how close you are to being insensitive. It just tells you what your homeostasis should be like, statistically speaking, so that you can have a long, restful night of sleep without any interruptions. Many say that you should stop eating several hours before bedtime, but that doesn't really take into account, that advice doesn't take into account who you are and how you live and what your body is like and how you metabolize energy, how much fat you're carrying on your body, or what your habits are in terms of nutrition. If you're someone who has high volumes of low nutrient density foods, like if you're a vegan and you eat a ton of salads, maybe your nutritional profile at night needs to be a little bit adapted, right? So that takes into account also that you should time your nutrient intake a little differently depending on how you live your life. So when people say, oh, you know, I do everything in my power to sleep well, I stop eating 4 or 3 hours before bedtime, that's usually the first adjustment that I make. Try a pre-sleep snack 30 minutes before bed, and let's just see as an experiment what happens. Treat your body like it's a laboratory, right? Or a laboratory. But do it because it's free, and do it because information is valuable, okay? So consider differently. If you find yourself having trouble sleeping or falling asleep or staying asleep, or you wake up too early in the early morning hours, try a different nutrient timing. We're also going to talk about what nutrients to eat. So I said earlier, you have different devices. More and more now, you have access to different companies that sell these continuous glucose monitors, and they try to pitch it with an app. And the app is continuously tracking your blood glucose, so you can get a more insightful understanding of how your body reacts to not only energy intake, but also energy expenditure, and what happens when none of those things are happening over time. So you can learn a lot just by comparing your numbers to what is considered to be good glucose numbers for bedtime, throughout the night, and for when you wake up in the morning. So I have here a list of brands that are selling different products. They're catered to different sorts of interests, right? So the Dexcom brand is pretty pervasive and inexpensive by comparison, but not very accurate, whereas the Abbott brand is more reliable, it's more expensive, and it's a little bit larger as far as patch is concerned. So, you know, you can shop and choose if you're interested in learning these sorts of things. If you think about what I'm telling you, monitoring your blood sugar and wearing a monitor as a little bit too much, like, it's a little like PJ Mad Scientist crazy, then you don't necessarily have to do that. I'm not saying all of us should go and put a patch on and look at our phones to learn more. I think you can learn a lot simply by recording and analyzing how you feel the morning after, or just recording the events that you have that wake you up, and compare that to things like what you ate, what time you ate it, and whether or not you exercised that day. How long did it take for you to go to bed? Is your bedtime consistent? We have a list of questions that we talk about in terms of sleep survey, okay? But journaling that information can help you track what will help you. So the questions are, for instance, do you wake up in the middle of the night? And does this come with a strong sense of alertness? Right? So if you wake up at 2, 3 in the morning and you snap into consciousness, it's not like you were trying to stay asleep and your body kind of nudged you. It's you snap into consciousness and you're alert and you can get up and be productive. That can be a symptom that your blood sugar has actually dropped quite low, causing a release of catabolic hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And this is what we call a relative, well, actually extremely low blood sugar in the middle of the night, okay? If you feel like you're a light sleeper, you occasionally wake up in the morning hours, you may still be low on blood glucose. So that low-medium range, if you were monitoring with a device, would probably come in between 70 and 80 milligrams per deciliter, okay? So you can imagine that there is a sweet spot, right? We're getting to a middle ground that's good, and anything in excess is also detrimental to your sleep. Most people can sleep through the night with a 70 to 80 range. However, and this is 30 minutes before bed, by the way, right? This is when you measure it 30 minutes before bed. You might not have as deep or restful sleep. You might be stuck in stage 1, stage 2 sleep and have very shortened REM cycles, a very shortened stage 3 sleep. So you're more likely to wake up in stage 1 and stage 2 sleep, but you could potentially sleep through the night, think that you succeeded at sleeping, but you weren't metabolically resting in the optimum way. The deepest sleep is achieved at the blood glucose reading of between 80 to 110 milligrams per deciliter, right? And the sweet spot for that, we cover a little later, is between 90 and 100, it seems. So the more narrow you are right close to that range, the more effective you are at staying asleep. This is the homeostasis we're looking for, right? The liver maintains a steady glucose release without the involvement of stress hormones, okay? Now, there's something that happens to everybody. It is called the dawn phenomenon rebound, or the dawn effect. Your body naturally will boost blood glucose about 3 to 4 hours before waking time, right? So it is signaled by the counter-regulatory hormones, right? We have growth hormone, cortisol, glucagon, adrenaline, to give you energy when you awaken, right? So your body's already preparing you for the wakeful state metabolically. Your mind isn't engaged yet, but your body's preparing for your mind to get up and use your body. And as we know, the brain also consumes blood glucose, right? I think it's something like 7 grams of glucose per hour, or something like that. So you need to have a certain amount for your brain to be able to process what it needs to process when you're in your REM sleep and your stage 3 sleep. If your bedtime glucose is elevated, over 130 and up to 180 milligrams per deciliter, the rebound is greater. It'll actually overpower the slow insulin release that your liver will attempt to use to process the bloodborne glucose and try to store it as glycogen. It's going to overpower that insulin release, and it's just going to continue to elevate your blood glucose dramatically. So if you eat too much before bed, or especially if you eat carb-rich foods or simple carbohydrates or things that are high on the glycemic index scale, the glycemic load can cause you to have the significant rebound effect. And it's not that you just stay asleep. You actually might wake up, and in the next morning, you'll wake up feeling groggy, thirsty, and generally unrested. But you also can wake up in the middle of the night finding yourself in cold sweats and elevated heart rate and that sort of thing, okay? We don't have to talk about the nuances of gluconeogenesis, but this is the process that actually got me interested in sleep to begin with, because I knew that when your body depletes blood sugar too dramatically, that your body will undergo gluconeogenesis. That's just the creation of new blood sugar, right? And it does that by cannibalizing your body. In other words, it uses hormones to break down your own proteins to create amino acids to transfer that back into becoming bloodborne glucose, long story short, okay? The metabolic process is the way the body synthesizes blood glucose when it reaches the critically low level. The liver uses amino acids from muscle protein, lactate from red blood cells and muscle, and glycerol from fat breakdown that's already stored in your liver to create glucose. If glycogen stores are unavailable in the liver, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline. So it's a natural phenomenon that happens to create gluconeogenesis, is that your body is going to release adrenaline. It is going to release cortisol. They're both stress hormones. Adrenaline, epinephrine, is going to cause your heart rate to be elevated. You're going to wake up feeling much more alert. And cortisol itself is associated with many different negative side effects, including fat storage and poor sleep. And if it's too elevated, can cause stress reactions and inflammatory process, that sort of thing. So you want to keep your heart healthy. You want to sleep well, basically. Glycogen stores are unavailable in the liver. Body releases cortisol. I'll cover that. These stress hormones can snap you out of sleep and cause a sensation of alertness. Okay, so if you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel like you have that adrenaline surge and you can't quite understand why, this is probably the process that's causing it, gluconeogenesis. Okay. Some terrible things to have before bed. Alcohol is probably by far the worst, right? Not only does it have the carbohydrate load, it actually has a different effect on your liver than sugar directly would, or like sugary foods would. Alcohol intake before bed can inhibit gluconeogenesis. So when your body is panicking and try to elevate blood sugar by cannibalizing your own tissues to do that, it won't be able to. So the liver prioritizing processing the alcohol. It is a toxin after all. And this can lead to the hypoglycemic condition. The body releases adrenaline to attempts to fix that dip, but you're not succeeding, right? So your sleep will be disrupted, and you'll only normalize the blood sugar over time after you've already processed the alcohol, which is why I tell people that a glass of wine at night, which a lot of people call a nightcap, in my opinion, is a 3 a.m. alarm. That's the way I look at it. Some people are able to sleep through it, especially if they're extremely active, or if they have a very strong metabolism, or if they have I forget the name of the receptor blocker that helps you process alcohol faster, but some people with a higher tolerance can process alcohol fast enough where they might not even notice it. Still, the worst thing for you to do before bed is to have alcohol, okay? And a close second, we have sugar intake. Sweet treats before bed are a definite way for you to ruin your quality of sleep. Even if you don't wake up, you'll probably discover that you're having more vivid dreams and you're recalling your dreams. And as you remember in a previous session, I said that if you're recalling your dreams, you're probably not sleeping as deeply as you can be. So yeah, dreams are fun. Interpreting them can be fun conversation. But the real concept of dreaming is that you're becoming aware during your sleep hours. And we don't want that because that means you're not entirely surrendered to the unconscious state, okay? So sugar intake before bed can create huge spikes in insulin. And there are we're not going to get into all the oxidative stress and damage that can happen to your body from these insulin spikes. But the bottom line is you don't want to become insensitive to insulin. So the less frequent that you have these insulin reactions and these huge blood sugar spikes, the more likely you're going to have good reactivity to the insulin over time, right? So this is to deal with the hyperglycemic state. This is the way the body tries to shuttle glucose into the bloodstream, from the bloodstream into the cells. The rebound effect that we talked about earlier can have this dramatic effect called reactive hypoglycemia. So you will have that alertness or the wake up in the middle of the night with the cold sweats, or you'll wake up feeling that thirst and that grogginess and that general sensation that you didn't rest effectively at night, right? Yeah, so this is the rundown. Certain foods will raise your blood glucose more dramatically than others. So that's where we talk a little bit about fats, proteins, and carbs, right? There is no enemy. The trick is to find an adequate balance, right? So if you have protein alone, it can elicit a little change in your blood glucose, but generally speaking, carbs are the ones that are going to create a more significant impact. But carbs behave differently if you eat them on their own versus if you pair them with proteins or fats. So you want to think about balanced meals, balanced foods, and balanced intake, right? And I also say if you're going to indulge in a sweet treat, like if you do like the cookie, or if you like a little bit of ice cream, or you want a glass of wine, I recommend you have it before sundown. Have it earlier. Have your treat earlier in the day. Having it right before bed to celebrate the end of the day is just a way for you to sabotage your sleep. So if you're going to have a treat, have it before the sun goes down. It's been a rule for my kids since they were born. They want some candy. Sorry, son, the sun's already down. Ask me again tomorrow when the sun's up. That's the way it is. We do want to achieve that natural homeostasis and sustain it as long as possible throughout the night. The body will do its best to regulate, but we want to give it the best start possible. And that's where the pre-sleep meal comes into play. The carbohydrates, simple and complex. We want a mixed pre-bedtime meal consisting of protein paired with the non-sugar simple carbs or fats with carbs. I say simple carbs because they're more easily digestible. If you have a lot of fiber in your last meal of the day, you could create discomfort, bloating, and for some people have less tolerance for it. It will snap you out of sleep because you're not getting the nutrient uptake as quickly as you like. I would recommend that you keep your simple carbs tame in volume, but that is your easier path for you to get your blood sugar under control as long as you pair it with your protein and fats. We don't need to cover that again. Negative feedback loop in the endocrine system. Change the glucose, glycogen. Yeah, this is all supplementary information. You can know more about if you get really interested in it. You can know what the pancreas does. We can know all these things, but the bottom line is that you should have that basic understanding that what you eat affects your blood sugar, okay? Now it's time for a quiz. So we're going to get to the last page in your handout, please. And there you're going to see a list of foods. And right alongside, you're going to have high, medium, and low glycemic index. When we talk about glycemic index, you think about glucose being 100. So that's the maximum allowable number in the glycemic index. And then something low on the scale, of course, has a lower glycemic impact on your body. So I want you to go ahead and guesstimate each of these foods and circle if you think they're low, medium, or high on the glycemic index, okay? 30 seconds. 7:45 yet?
7:35.
7:35. Okay, cool. Good. All right. Let me know when you guys are done. I really wish Richard was here. I really want him to watch this one. Yeah. Good. All right. We can leave the music on, that's fine. That's all right. So when we say low, we're talking about glycemic index below 55. Mid is between 56 and 70. And high is 71 to 100. Okay, so now we can go through the list. I think there are two of those items that are not on the list, but we can Google those answers. I think avocado is one of them. And the other one, I forget, might have been the last one on the list. But go ahead and read the first one for me, somebody.
Peanuts.
Peanuts. And you said low, medium, or high? Low. Peanuts are low, in fact. Of course, our nutritionist would know. So,
Good job.
yeah, very low. Okay, second food.
Pizza.
Pizza. Pizza surprised me. Pizza is actually,
I said medium.
it's actually in the low range. Why?
It depends what kind
I guess it depends what kind of pizza, but what are the primary ingredients of a pizza?
bread,
So yeah, like a dough,
tomato sauce,
tomato sauce.
and then it depends what cheese and whatever topping.
Pizza's not pizza without cheese. So the cheese is the impact there because that fat on the simple carbs is going to attenuate that glycemic impact. So that's just a perfect illustration to show you that the foods that you're blending together, the foods that you're combining, are going to have a massive effect. Because if I just had you have the cheese for lunchtime and then just the bread at night, you'd have a different effect, right? So combining your nutrients is important. Understanding that cheese is primarily fat and milk proteins. There is also a small degree of sugars and lactose, right? But generally speaking, we're looking at the processed grain and the dough being your source of all the glycemic impact, and then the fats mitigate the absorption. Okay, what's the next food on the list?
Apples?
Apples, low, medium, or high?
You said medium.
You said medium? Medium?
With the skin or without the skin?
That's a good question. I'd say with. They're looking at the whole apple. And is it a ripe red apple or is it a green apple? It says low, right? We're still low with apples. Apples, when people say like I when I was extreme with some clients, are like, okay, PJ, give me the meal plan. I'm like, don't eat fruits. If you're gonna try to cut back on your carbohydrates, don't eat fruits except for apples and pears.
And berries.
Apples and pears. I don't even say berries. Like I just tell them apples and pears. You know, I went on that apple fast.
Berries, I know.
Yeah, you know, because blueberries.
I love berries.
Now we know.
But apples are, the peels are full of fiber, the apple itself as well, but they're not so concentrated with sugar as they are in other fruits. But what happens if you dehydrate apples and you get dehydrated apple slices?
Get in trouble.
It's more sugar. You absorb the sugar faster. It concentrates it. The next food on the list, please.
Bananas.
Bananas, we know, come on. Is bananas low, medium, or high?
I said high.
Doesn't it depend on how ripe it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. The green bananas that you had earlier today are lower. In fact, they're between 17 and 21 in general, depending on the size of the banana or how much, I don't know what the serving is. What's the serving? One large, 136 grams of banana. This is a ripe banana, by the way. This is a yellow banana with brown spots on it. Okay?
Is that saying 52?
It says 52, which seems higher than you, but you know, an average banana has 26 grams of sugar in it. If you don't believe me, Google it. That's the same amount of sugar in your regular donut. So bananas are quite sugary. But like you said, the green bananas are a lot less offensive in that regard than a ripe banana. Okay? What's the next food on the list?
Snickers bar.
Snickers. Well, this is a wild one though. Low, medium, or high? It's like right on the cusp. It is weird.
55?
55.
Because of the peanuts.
I don't think so. I think it's the hydrogenated oils. That's my suspicion. Yeah, the peanuts in it, of course, but it's sugar, it's chocolate. You know, you think it would nougat, whatever's in the middle. I don't like Snickers. It's actually my least favorite candy. It's my least favorite. Sometimes when I eat it, I feel like it just gets stuck in my throat.
Like the nuts.
Snickers and I don't care.
Nuts at the top.
Yeah, I know that.
Candy bar in the world.
No, it's not. No. I'll take a Kit Kat bar over a Snickers. All right. So yeah, Snickers bar surprisingly not that high, but I don't think for any good reasons. I think it's for bad reasons.
Yeah.
I think the hydrogenated oils and the Snickers.
Except for the peanuts.
Probably.
That's probably the only healthy thing.
There's nothing healthy. Stop it with the Snickers. It's not healthy. Don't eat it.
I don't really
All right, next food.
have them anymore. I can't have them anymore.
Potato chip.
Potato chips, low, medium, or high.
Low.
Similar to the Snickers, actually, right? Just on the top end of the low range, right?
Really?
Strange. It's like just starch. It could be the oils, and I don't know what the salt does to it, but yeah, generally it's pure carbohydrate and oils, right? So it's got to be the oil. Who knows what the glycation of the proteins in the potato? I don't know. Maybe it does something. It makes it harder to take. Mostly carbs, right? So, all right. What's the next one?
White rice.
White rice. Now this is a tricky one. White rice is high, 64, right? Well, actually mid-high. Well, I consider it high. It's not sugar, but it has a pretty significant impact. On this chart, it's one of the highest ones, right? I'm not considering glucose specifically. And I tell people to eat white rice over brown rice because I find that brown rice is difficult to digest. And I'm talking about gut health. I personally have really bad experience with unprocessed grains like that. White rice seems to digest more easily for me, and I don't have any detrimental effect from the blood glucose spike as long as the rice is paired with something. Avocado, tuna, you name it, right? As long as it's paired, you're mixing your macronutrients together, okay? What's the next one on the list?
Table sugar.
Table sugar. You would think it would be identical to glucose, but for some reason or other, it's not. 68. That I do not know why. I figured it'd be almost at the top. What do you think?
I got nothing.
I don't know. It's strange, right? You think that it would just be like glucose, straight up. But maybe something to do with the cane sugars. All right, what's the next food?
Watermelon.
Watermelon. Low, medium, or high?
I know it's high.
We all know, unfortunately, because we all love watermelon. It's sugar water. It's sugar water. It really is.
It's also high in electrolytes, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I still eat watermelon, right? But I only have it before the sun goes down, so there's that.
Really?
I looked up the Snickers bar.
Okay.
Why it's lower. It says it contains significant amounts of fat from the chocolate, caramel, and peanuts, and a moderate amount of protein, mostly from the peanuts and the nougat. In the presence of fat and protein, it slows down the overall digestion and absorption
Okay.
of the carbohydrates. So it's the
Fair
nougat
enough.
and the peanuts that.
Yeah.
make it
It's
low.
still, don't eat it. It's
But
bad.
Butterfinger is very high because I looked that up too.
It's very high?
Yeah, Butterfinger is like 71.
Well, look up Reese's peanut butter cups since we're talking about it.
This watermelon one is troubling for me because
Yeah.
I know like in diabetic food exchanges,
Mm-hmm.
for patients that have like a high A1C,
Mm-hmm.
the two fruits that you get bigger serving size with less blood sugar impact are supposed to be all the berries and all the melons.
Mm.
So like for instance, a diabetic serving size of watermelon is supposed to be a cup,
Mm.
but like other fruit, it's half a cup.
I see.
So that kind of surprises me. And I always thought it was because it's predominantly water, so it's
Right.
diluted sugar.
Yeah. Maybe the impact, because like the way they calculate the impact is by taking like blood samples, something like every 7
Yeah.
minutes or something like that. Maybe it just has a faster metabolization than other fruits.
For some reason, I always taught people that like you could do a little bit more if it's melon,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I love watermelon.
Yeah, that's good.
Are
The
the
Buttercups.
Huh.
Only 34.
Yes. No more Snickers. Go Reese's. We could start their marketing campaign. You're like, want to sleep well? Eat a peanut butter cup. Was that?
Does this mean I get Reese's before bed?
Nice try.
This is going real.
I didn't mean it. I was being facetious. All right, what's the next food on the list?
Popcorn.
Pipoca, popcorn. Okay, so
Me too.
yeah, I mean,
Me too.
we know
High.
it's high.
But it's
Right.
so high in fiber.
Yeah,
You
you'd
would
think.
think that it would slow it down.
But it's inside out though. The fiber is useless. It's just encased in fiber before they pop it.
Huh.
I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, and I don't know in this particular case if it's just literally corn. But what about buttered popcorn? I bet you that's lower.
That's probably lower.
Yeah, so if you're gonna have popcorn,
Well,
Saturated.
lower for blood sugar, but higher in terms of impact on.
Well, and not good nutrition.
it's not good nutrition. Popcorn is, and in fact, you can eat too much popcorn and
Right.
kill yourself over it. You can get
Be a little
popcorn
bit
lung.
misleading. She's like, does that mean it's not healthy or it is healthy? I'm like, well, it kind of depends on who you are and what you're looking for.
I had a roommate who would eat popcorn every evening. Every evening. And he told me that he was well aware that there is a lung condition you can get from eating too much popcorn. And but he didn't care. He was just like, I love my Orville Redenbacher. And he just would pop popcorn every night. His name was Sean.
The glycemic index isn't the same thing as nutrition.
Yeah.
This
No,
just
you're
has
right.
to do with blood sugar.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean these things are high in nutrition or good for you.
So I didn't even cover like glycemic load, right? And just because something has a high glycemic impact doesn't mean you can't mediate it or moderate it by pairing it with other foods. Not too long ago, I think within the last 2 years, a study came out that everybody started referencing the first few pages without going into it. I'm trying to remember the title. It was I can't remember exactly, but it was a really long-winded title, but it was about how you should time your nutrients, whether there's a difference by having your meals as we normally have them, which is like the salad first and then the entree and then the dessert, or what happens if you invert it, where you have your dessert first and then your salad, then your entree, or that sort of thing. And in the beginning of it, they were showing that in the first hour and a half, there was a big spike if you had your carbs first, your sweet treats first. But it turned out that most people forgot to read the second half of the study that showed that after 3 hours, everybody had the same result. So, all right, moving on. Good nighttime meals. You guys had some today. Remember, no sweets and no alcohol. Try eating closer to bedtime if you're having trouble falling asleep, or if you have a night where you're going to be, for whatever reason, nervous, first day of school, and you want to go to bed well, then eat a little closer to bedtime and see how that helps you. Especially if you're going to eat things with higher in tryptophan. You can have your turkey dinner meal and it'll help you go to bed. If it's more than 2.5 hours, this is an opinion now. This is informed by my years dealing with people's nutrition and their sleeplessness. If it's been more than 2.5 hours between your last meal and your bedtime, I really think you should have a pre-sleep snack, similar to something that one of the 3 things that we served you today. Okay, it doesn't have to be one of those 3, but just something in that balance of protein, fat, and carbohydrate. Right? We have a few of those examples here: a tuna salad avocado bowl, a taco bowl with chicken. You can pre-prepare your foods and prepare yourself for success that way. Yeah, so you have your traditional breakfast. Turns out I get some people who say, quick advice, tell me how me to sleep better. I say, have breakfast for dinner. And a lot of times they'll come out like, BJ, I did the breakfast for dinner thing and I slept so well. Generally speaking, breakfast has a balance of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates that seem to mimic the good pre-sleep meal. Foods that ruin sleep, we already talked about this. Caffeine, if you become a coffee drinker, I used to drink more than 3 cups of coffee, and I don't recommend it. I was including Red Bulls and stuff. I only drink 1 per day, and I try not to touch it otherwise. I'd rather take a nap than drink another cup of coffee. Spicy food can alter your sleep. It keeps your body from cooling itself down. Your body temperature has to drop by about 2 degrees for you to sleep deeply. Fermented foods are high in histamine, and histamine affects the neurons that cause alertness. So these foods include aged cheese and cured meats, sauerkraut, tomatoes, and wine as well, unfortunately. They'll all stimulate the neurons in your brain that cause alertness and wakefulness, okay? Taurine-rich foods, we're talking about salted fish, soy sauce, aged cheese, and pepperoni. They cause epinephrine release and connect you harder into your sympathetic nervous system. So you're not going to sleep deeply if that's the concentration of the foods that you're eating at night. Having too much fatty foods can also cause discomfort. So like burgers and pizza and deep fried foods will cause delayed gastric emptying, and it'll be hard for your body to reach that homeostasis to begin with. Artificial sweeteners can have a deleterious effect to the gut-brain axis. There's a deep connection between the neurons that permeate our gut and our brain, and the way that the foods can affect those. It turns out that artificial sweeteners can have strange and unpredictable effects, and they can create a dysregulation in that pathway. So generally speaking, you don't want artificial sweeteners before bed. You might say, well, I'm not having any sugar, it's going to sleep well. Don't replace it with stevia or Splenda or whatever. High salt meals, of course, we were talking about Chinese food. They'll elevate your blood pressure, they'll cause fluid shifts, they'll make you get that nighttime urination. So not too much salt at night, okay? And alcohol, of course, the bane of our existence. Don't drink alcohol before bed unless you don't mind having trouble sleeping the next morning. Drink water earlier in the day. Stop an hour or two before sleep. Stop drinking caffeine by 2 p.m. It takes 6 hours for you to for the half-life of caffeine, right? So you want to. Did you say 7 or is it?
Oh, no. I was just wondering why I was laughing.
Oh, okay.
Your number 3 bullet point, are we still talking about soda?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Nighttime teas can help you relax. It's also part of a bedtime routine if you do it habitually, and it can signal your brain through behavioral therapy. You can get yourself to recognize the beginning of a routine if this is something you do nightly. Plan the last meal of your day in advance so you have all the ingredients that you need. Keep emergency sleep-friendly ingredients for late night snacks. And that's where I talk about having the rice cake, the peanut butter, and the bananas handy, or the rice cake with the cream cheese and the lox and that sort of thing. Enjoy your food for its effect. If you're trying to enjoy the food because it's sweet, it's not the right approach at night. Do that in the daytime, okay? There isn't much worse than going to bed on an empty stomach, except having alcohol and sugar. I should say drinking alcohol and eating sugar. You can ruin your sleep by eating an unbalanced meal, right? So if you eat a big meal, but it happens to be all carbs, or if you have a big meal and it's all protein, you're gonna mess up that homeostasis, right? If you sleep poorly, you're likely to make impulsive eating decisions the next day. So good sleep starts with a planned meal. Remember to plan your meals in advance, okay? All right, thank you. That was the spiel for the nutritional on it. Thank you. All right, so now we're doing mental redirect. Do you want me to prime them about how it's different from meditation, or?